bàtàlẹ̀ èmi náà dogun rẹ ni gbà mo ti dogun.
Greetings. Good morning. I want to first start off by thanking the network for choosing this topic today. This is a topic that is so important to me and to African people all over the world. And when I say African people, I am talking about black people on the continent of Africa. I am talking about black people throughout the diaspora. When I say e caro, I want you to say, oh, e caro, e caro. My name is Ifatayo Adejoke Iwinyemi, and I am an Iyawo, Iyalo Risha, in the traditional indigenous African spiritual path of Ifa of the Yoruba peoples. You know me as Stephanie Franklin, but I am Ifatayo. I greet you in the words of the Yoruba peoples. I give all praise to Oludumare. All praise to Ifa. All praise to Osala. All praise to Oshun and all the Orumale. All praise to the Ogungun. And all praise to the Iyami, the force of the African mothers. Woo, I prepared remarks. I'm trying to stick to the script because of time. And I'm feeling moved to say a lot of things because I want to talk to you about the spirituality of African people that is never discussed. And I'm talking the ancient indigenous spiritual practices of African people. So, in the frame of human rights, I want to speak about economic, social, and cultural rights. And I specifically want to underscore the cultural rights component of that. You heard the drums of Bata that were just playing. Those drums were talking to you, and they were talking to you loud. I wish they were louder. I wish we had an ensemble up here speaking our talk, speaking our people, who we are, what we stand for, and what we hold. Born in the souls of African people, the soulful rhythms of who we are is inextricably linked to our spiritual history and practices that embody life, music, community, love, acceptance, family, the reverence for elders. Can we get a clap on that, please? The reverence for elders. Our ancestors, generosity, compassion, and absolute and complete sheer genius. Embedded and intertwined in our bones, in our ancestral bones, is our remembering of who we are and the richness and depth of our cultural and spiritual history and legacy that has been blurred through white supremacy, forced Christian domination, and Afrophobia, resulting in Afro-genocide. Struggling for recognition of our culture and traditional spirituality, African peoples continue to face constant, inaccurate, and negative stereotypes and depictions of our ancient spiritual practices as primitive and demonic. Woo! Forcing many of us to practice underground for fear of persecution, criminalization, and isolation, secreting a very rich and valuable history, culture, and spiritual legacy, which impedes our human right to religious freedom, social and cultural identity, preservation, and self-determination. Globally, the perpetuation of untruths about African people and our history, the entrenchment and force of European consciousness and ideals, genocide of African peoples and their culture, and our continued subjugation force many of us to deny our social and cultural spiritual birthright, distancing ourselves from our legacy, our inherent being, and embracing cultural spiritual practices that deny who we are and our history. January 1st, 2015 marked the commencement of the International Decade for People of African Descent by the UN, declaring the theme Recognition, Justice, and Development. Fighting for cultural recognition of indigenous African spiritual practices such as Ifa, Akan, Sangoma, and Afro-Atlantic spiritual practices born out of the transatlantic slave trade, and the indigenous African spiritual practices such as Candomblé, Umbanda, Santeria, Lukumi, and Vodun should be part of our human rights agenda for reparatory justice. And I want to underscore reparatory justice. Now, many of you know we were promised 40 acres and a mule that we never got. And we'll never get it, right? But what we need to do is expand, and many activists and advocates have done this, expand the definition of reparations. And part of reparations, part of reparatory justice is to see me, see my people, and recognize who we are and what we have done to contribute to the evolution of this planet. Eclipsed by the focus and persecution and criminalization of Islamic practitioners, traditional African or Afro-Atlantic spiritual paths are rarely spoken of in human rights spaces. This has got to change. When are we going to do openings that are spiritual in nature, that underscore and show the depths and the richness of who we are as African people? We have a rich legacy. The depictions and the untruths about who the Orishas are. Let me tell you who the Orishas are, for those of you who don't know who they are, because you need to know who they are. They are the gods and goddesses, the Orumale, that come from Ifa in Nigeria, of the Yoruba peoples, of the Yoruba peoples of Nigeria, strong and proud. When they moved through the transatlantic slave trade, when we were captured as political prisoners and brought here as free labor throughout the Americas, we had to hide our religious and spiritual practices, which is the core of who we are as a people, and were forced to practice Christian ways to survive. To survive. Now we are finding our way back. I can't quote you stats. I don't have stats to quote. I can quote you experiences. I can quote you who I am as an African woman in the Americas, who has traveled the world extensively and did not fully find herself till she journeyed back to Africa and was embraced in ways that she never has by her African people in Nigeria. Ashe. Recognizing that the U.S. has indicated that economic, social, and cultural rights are not rights at all, But social indicators erodes the very fabric of what it means to self-determine. When you embrace your cultural heritage, which for African people is by nature our spiritual heritage, you stand with dignity. You know who you are. You don't question your existence or whether or not it matters. You know that you matter. When you look at spiritual figures that look like you and honor you as a person, you become you're alive. You can breathe. You can breathe. You are whole. You are restored. It gives you dignity. So this is my call to action. You are human rights activists and advocates that advocate about a number of political issues. The cultural retention and preservation of indigenous African spiritual practices on the continent and the Afro-Atlantic spiritual practices practiced throughout the diaspora need everybody's attention in this room. Because when you honor the legacy of one group of people, you honor the legacy of all peoples. So in your social media tweeting and your Facebook, talk about African people. Not as, okay, we topped this statistic in, infant mortality or African American girls in foster care or mass criminalization or police murders. No, I want you to start talking. You continue to talk that talk. Yes, we know that talk, but we don't know about the history of African peoples outside of the black church, the Nation of Islam. We are much deeper peoples than that. We have a history that is ancient and predates all of that. So begin to talk about these issues. Begin to accept African people and their practice of indigenous ways, which is a way of life for them. It is not separate from who they are. Begin to accept that from them. Understand that there are many more spiritual paths out here other than Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. There are so many more indigenous spiritual practices out here, but I am speaking specifically about the African ones. So in the context of the decade, for the next 10 years, it ends on December 31st, 2024. There will be programs and policies that will occur, policy pushing all over the world for the recognition, justice, and development of African peoples. And there is no issue on the agenda that I think is more important than our cultural legacy, the remembrance of who we are, so we can continue to exist as a people, because we are dying. Our culture is dying. Our own people are running from who we are as African people. So please, beyond the decade, but I want you to start thinking of it and doing it now. Check out the Ubuntu Council, which is a member-initiated action team of the U.S. Human Rights Network. Our webpage is thedecade.org. It's a very basic page. I co-chair with Dewoti Desir. We need help. If people want to volunteer, if they know interns, please see me. Lastly, I want to say that the Working Group of Experts for People of African Descent will be coming to the United States of America for 10 days to do a fact-finding mission on the state of racial issues, for African people in this country. They are coming to Baltimore. They're coming to Chicago, Jackson, New York, and Washington, D.C. My organization, My law firm, the Franklin Law Group, is the anchor group in Baltimore. For all of the Baltimore folks in the room, please come to the self-organizing session at 6:45 tonight right outside this room. And I want to thank all of you for your attention, and I give you love. Ashe.